1 year tomorrow since the Dobbs decision was released. The Supreme Court's, as the Johns were talking, John Meacham and Jonathan Lemire were talking about earlier, and way too early, approval for the Supreme Court has plummeted to its lowest point ever.
Yeah.
Disapproval has skyrocketed to its highest point ever. Only 36% of Americans supported the decision. 61% opposed it. And if you're sitting there going, oh, my God, who could have ever seen this coming? Well, anybody that had actually been looking at polls over the past 20, 30 years would know that hardly ever, and I'm serious, we've heard about overturning Roe. There's always been only about 1/3 of Americans that have supported the overturning of Roe. Mm-hmm. This has happened. It's had horrific consequences for women, for their health. We hear one horror story after another. I will say, though, this is a political program for the most part. We try to tell people what's coming. The politics, though, just a political earthquake in a way I think very few could have imagined. Just the scale that the tremors would be felt all the way to Wisconsin, Kentucky, Kansas, and in deep red states.
That's exactly right, Joe. And if you look at the recent polling from the NBC poll, you have 80% of women between the ages of 18 and 49 who oppose the overturning of Roe. You have 60% of independents. You have 30%, about 1/3 of Republicans. Those are earth-shattering numbers. And in many ways, well, as you said, for a long time, there has been greater support for keeping abortion access in place than getting rid of it. This has awakened women, men and women, independents, people of all political stripes across the country. We saw that in the midterm elections, and it looks to be that enthusiasm, that anger, that passion has not subsided as we're seeing these fights happen state to state. So as we mark 1 year tomorrow, it's just a reminder of kind of how the political electorate has also been awakened by not wanting their rights to be taken away.
Yeah, and their rights. Let's just focus on that, because I think while the concept on the far right might be, okay, we have prevented the right to an abortion, what they've really done is overturned 50 years of women's health. And anybody, whether they're a Republican or a Democrat, whether they're a Christian, whatever they call themselves and whatever they base their values around, anyone who has had a baby or knows someone who has gone through a pregnancy knows this isn't just about abortion. This is about women's health, and the right to health care has been taken away for women across the country, and we're seeing it in real time.
Well, and you know, the thing is, it's not, John Heilemann, it's not just that a 50-year right has been taken away. It's what Republicans have done with this moment. They've taken a situation that would have been dangerous for them politically, and they've made it exponentially worse with radical viewpoints that cause 10-year-old girls who have been raped to flee their state. Candidates in Michigan who end up losing in a landslide, saying that a 14-year-old girl being raped by her uncle is a perfect reason to have laws that would have the state compel her to have a forced birth. And you can go down the line time and again. They've made one egregious decision after another. You could look at Wisconsin, keeping in place a total ban from 1849. I mean, let's be very clear here. The majority of Americans support an abortion ban at 15, 16, 17 weeks. If you look at the polling, they want abortion laws much like you see in Europe, in France, and in other European countries. But right now, the Democrats are getting free rein on this issue to point to the extremism of the Republicans and not have to answer many questions themselves, because the Republicans support such extreme bans. And as we said before, it's crushing them in Wisconsin judicial races. It's crushing them in Kansas. It's crushing them in Kentucky, in a lot of red states.
Right. You know, Joe, it's like the thing that it's been so hard to get a lot of people on the right to understand, and that will still make people scream when you say it, is that the regime under Roe v. Wade, the system that it installed, was a compromise. It was not a system that allowed for abortion on demand at any point in a pregnancy. It allowed for laws that restricted abortion in various ways. The trimester system that Harry Blackmun created in that ruling was itself a political compromise. It said we're not going to have we can restrict abortions to a limited degree in that third trimester, and it also meant that you would not have a full overturning of abortion. You couldn't outlaw abortion. So it's like that itself was a compromise, and the right, for political reasons, kind of reinterpreted that, argued in a different way, and said that Roe v. Wade was somehow had allowed abortion on demand. It never did, and so that would have been a stable political compromise built on top of a Supreme Court precedent that granted a certain right. That was taken down by this decision. And then Republicans had a choice, because what the ruling did was it threw this back into the political arena. And I would say, a savvy political operator looking down from on high would have said to Republicans, hey, guys, go slow here. This has never happened before. Right. A fundamental right has never been taken away before in the history of the court. And there was a stable compromise that was in place for 50 years. If you mess around with this and try to claim ultimate victory and grab all the ground you can and have a power grab, there's going to be a backlash. And it was predictable in that sense. You couldn't predict how much energy it would unleash on the part of women who were standing up for their health and their rights. But you could have predicted the backlash, and Republicans did exactly the dumbest thing they could possibly have done in a lot of these states, which was, Joe, all the things you cited, do things that would be easy to campaign against because they were so outrageously radical.
And that's why you look at polling even now. I discount polling. I don't care who it's positive for or negative for. I discount polling just like we discounted polling before the 22 election when everybody was talking about a red wave, and abortion was only being cited by 5% of the electorate as being important to them. We didn't believe it at the time, and everybody around this table we were right. And it's the same thing now. There may be people that have problems with this issue or that issue with Joe Biden or the Democrats. As we get closer and closer to the elections, it's going to become more in focus, and all the things that everybody from the Wall Street Journal editorial page to Ann Coulter have warned Republicans about, that they've got to get smart on abortion or else they're going to keep losing elections. Well, they aren't getting smart on abortion, and the bad things are going to happen. I've got to say, and I'm going to talk to John Meacham later about this, the United States Supreme Court, in a political crisis, unlike any political crisis it's been in, at least in my lifetime, even after the 2000 recount, their approval ratings recovered very quickly after that and were respected and trusted again. But you look at just how rigged the process has been. And I don't want to go through all the things that happened in the United States Senate with Merrick Garland and others. You look at the billions of dollars that people are pouring in now to influence this. You look at the will of the people. Like 65, 70% of Americans being ignored and overturning a 50-year precedent. Unfortunately, they have destroyed the credibility of the court, the far right has. And my prediction is it's coming. There is going to be reform in the judicial branch. And I don't know what that reform looks like, but I think it's going to start with the United States Supreme Court because their approval rating is going to just keep going down as it gets more and more politicized. And let's face it, bought off by an element that has billions of dollars and are using billions of dollars to buy off these Supreme Court fights. And at the same time, with the Supreme Court right now that's just running roughshod over the ethics. Just basic ethical considerations. So again, they're doing this to themselves. And when there's reform, and when people talk about a new Supreme Court that's going to be less political and more representative of the country, they can scream and yell all they want. it's going to be their fault.
It's their own doing. It's all their own doing.
It won't be court packing.
Yeah.
It's not going to be FDR court packing. This is going to be, I predict, a bipartisan group of people that are going to have to come together and say, how do we reform this court and take the vicious politics and the billions and billions of
Where's
dollars
that money
now
coming
that the
from?
Federalist Society has
There's it. There
to
you go.
twist and distort this process? Again, everybody's free to do what they want to do.
Go ahead.
But the extremism, well, they've been victims of, they would say, their own success. And they're going to pay for it, I think, politically, because any advances they've made are going to be undermined by reforms needed to take politics out of the process.
We're going to have